welcome Erika Geraerts to Future Proof.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we want to have a bit of a chat today about future proofing, and I think your journey is quite insightful in the context of future proofing. Perhaps let's start off with back, I think it was 3 years ago when I was, reinventing myself. You were one of the first people that I reached out to because I thought what you were doing is amazing. We'd never met, and I think I just asked you out for a coffee and you said yes.
Yeah.
When we first sat down, I asked you what you were passionate about, and do you remember what you said?
I said that I was passionate about people.
And are you still passionate about the same thing?
Yeah. I actually had someone else ask me what I was passionate about, and it's funny that we're talking about it again, and it feels really nice that my answer is still people. And when I go into an explanation about it, it feels really cliche, but it kind of drives everything that I do. It's not really about a product or a service. It's just about connecting to people, trying to tell some kind of story or tell a story for them. Yeah.
So I find this fascinating because I think I always say that opportunities lie on the end of connections. And I think everything amazing that's happened in my business has been due to human connections and this shared passion that I have with you around people. And I think what's interesting is that, they say that the rate of loneliness has doubled in the last 20 years, and we've never been more technologically connected yet humanly disconnected. So perhaps tell us a little bit around how human connection is important in terms of you future-proofing yourself, but also pursuing a career that you love.
I think that human connection is what really drives us all and what differentiates us from other species, I guess. We've done a lot of research into connection and loneliness with what I'm doing with Fluff, particularly around a younger audience, so in teenagers, and the rates of depression and suicide are all rising, it's really scary, and I think we gloss over it.
Yeah.
And we think that it's not going to happen to someone close to us, but it is happening really all around us. And I think there is a simple solution to it. We don't all have to stand on a soapbox and preach or abstain from technology or social media. I think it's a lot simpler than that. But it should be a focus for everyone, and that change isn't going to happen without consumers or the public driving it, and then also brands and bigger corporations being more responsible.
Yeah. For actually connecting people one-to-one or, face-to-face rather than just technology replacing that.
Yeah, I've had some really interesting discussions lately with people about whose responsibility it is to, I guess, put out responsible content, and whether consumers are dictating it by what they like and what they click on and who they follow, or if it's the corporations and these brands that are responsible because they are, at the end of the day, putting that content out to begin with. So I think people have lots of different opinions on it. Mine is that it has to come from both sides, and that consumers typically will follow, or the masses will follow, and that it has to start from the top, that brands have to start being accountable for what messages they're putting out and what content they're putting out. We're sort of in this amazing space where there's so much content, but it's almost too much. There's this saturation that we've lost any meaning or connection.
Yeah.
I was reading and talking with one of my staff this morning about an ID article that came out, which was talking about how kind of fucked up kids are these days because of just how much noise there is that they're exposed to every day, and they don't know how to make connections in the real world.
No.
And they don't know how to derive any sense of meaning from content, because content doesn't really mean anything anymore. So many words that we use don't mean anything anymore, and so it's really hard to have conversations with people now and know whether they're genuine or not.
So interesting, because one of the programs that I've been asked to create, I reckon probably 20 times in the last 2 months, by either large corporations or people that come to events, is the art of human connection.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what used to come naturally to us, it's like now we've deleted that programming because technology has replaced how we connect. Let's talk a little bit about Reinvention. So you had huge success at a very young age. Yeah, you were one of the founding members of Willow and Blake, and also Frank Body, and then not so long ago, what in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, a bit longer, you basically decided to start over and reinvent again. Now, I do a lot of work with people in fear and stepping into fear every day, and I imagine there was some significant fear in reinventing yourself and starting over. What were the biggest fears you had?
So, yeah, it was so scary. And I think that a lot of people, maybe from the outside, look at it that it was like, oh, she just jumped from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an easy decision at all. It was something that I had thought about for quite a long time, and that had probably been sitting in my gut for a while. And I had chosen to ignore it, and then to think about it, and then to actually address it. I was fortunate that I had an opportunity to leave in a certain, I guess, situation or context, and I had to make the call. And I saw my future at Frank and at Willow, and in about 5 years' time, and it was a very successful future. Uh, in terms of career growth, in terms of financially, but it was a very unhappy future. Not Probably not seemingly unhappy. I would have been fine. I could have accepted it. It could have been good in a lot of ways, but I just knew it wouldn't be me, and that I saw myself after these 5 years as just disconnected from myself.
Yep.
And you're right, I was really young when I started Willow and Frank, so I realized that I had more opportunity ahead of me, and that I wasn't going to be stuck or unable to do something else if I chose to leave. But it was a really scary time, and especially once I left and went through the kind of the time and the painfulness that comes with leaving two companies that are quite established, that I was kind of faced with all these fears about who I was without those two businesses. So it had been, I think, maybe 5-6 years between the two, which isn't a huge amount of time, but it was significant enough for me, and at a really like pivotal, probably age range from like 21 to 27.
Well, I mean, it was the bulk of your working career, wasn't it? So it's
Exactly.
relative to.
Yeah. So after leaving, I was like, who am I without these jobs? They have defined me. Most people who know me through Frank or through Willow. I'd started both businesses with my two best friends, and it's really hard leaving two friends within that sort of business context. And so they were removed from the situation. My job was removed from the situation. The lifestyle I'd been accustomed to was suddenly removed. And it felt really lonely. And especially because a lot of people would ask me questions about it or why I did it. And it's very hard to articulate that to someone, or to feel ready to share it as well. And I think leaving a business is like leaving a partner. I feel like I went through 2 divorces. And when you have staff, it's like you have children that you're not fighting over, but have to tell them and explain to them why you're leaving. It was really, really hard. And that takes time to heal. Like, it's been almost 2 years. And I still think about it all the time. And I'm really happy with my decision, but I look back and think about those years like really happily. I had such an amazing time, and it's sad that it wasn't my future or couldn't be my future. But at the same time, things happen, and you have to change.
So you said that it felt really lonely. You're now starting a new business, yeah, and obviously that there's a whole host of fears that go with that. So how are you? I suppose what are the fears you've got in starting a new business, and how are you dealing with that? How do you manage the fear?
So I think that I am now really accustomed to this idea of fear being ever present.
Yeah.
And I'm really okay with it. And I wasn't originally. I think so many of us have an aversion, like a fear of itself, of fear.
Yeah.
And starting a new business, I want to prove things to myself. There's definitely other people that I want to prove stuff to, which I don't think is a bad thing, to want to impress or prove yourself to others, so long as it's not,
Healthy.
I guess, the focus, or it doesn't
Yeah.
define you. But Yeah, I mean, we've spent over 2 years kind of researching, thinking, developing this brand and these products and this company, but I can't promise anyone or guarantee that it'll work. There's a risk in that, but then there's also something exciting in that fear. So I think for me, I've tried to spend the last year and a half, almost 2 years, trying to turn that fear into something positive and something really exciting.
Tell us a little bit around, obviously, happiness is important to you because you've made some significant decisions, which you've been questioned about by others, that have, gone against the trend in obviously pursuit of maintaining what's
Yeah.
important to you. So, first question is, how do you define happiness? And what are you doing to make sure you stay in tune with having your life aligned to that definition?
So I recently had a really amazing conversation with an incredibly successful businessman in New Zealand who has, I'm going to say maybe he was in his late 50s, early 60s, and has been working for a lot longer than I have. And we were talking about culture and defining success and defining happiness. And he said something that really resonated with me was that for him, success is when your heart, your head, your wallet, and your soul are aligned.
Oh, I like that.
And it was really nice. And he said that can take a long time, and not many people ever
Get that.
find that alignment.
Yeah.
And I felt so fortunate because I feel like I'm in a place right now where that is happening. And that doesn't mean that I'm making a ton of money right now. Like, Fluff is not earning any money right now. But I'm okay. Like, I can afford to pay my rent. I can afford to go out with my friends. There's a certain financial freedom which I think everyone should be able to have in their life. But I feel like my head is stimulated. I'm so challenged with Fluff every day and motivated. My heart feels like it's doing what it's meant to be doing, or I'm emotionally stimulated, and then my soul feels like this is just right and where I need to be. So it's a great place to be in. So I really like that definition of happiness and success, or I feel like they're interlinked.
So that's kind of like your checkpoints.
Yeah.
And it's
Because
so,
usually there's always one missing, right? You know,
Yeah.
you could be intellectually stimulated, but you don't love what you do, or you could be earning a fuck ton of money, but you're bored at work and you just turn up every day and tick boxes. And so to have them all aligned, I think that's really nice. And that will mean different things to different people, because some people will chase after a higher pay bucket than others. And you've got to find your own definition of that as well.
totally agree. And it's so interesting, as you say, around the definition of success, and the fact that you feel totally aligned and Fluff's not making money at the moment. I feel exactly the same way in my business. So, I've been doing this for 3 years. I made a personal commitment to myself where I carved out what I called a personal development fund and said, it's going to take me 2 to 3 years to build this business to something sustainable, and I'm willing to invest in me.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time from a mindset perspective to detach success from money.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's what especially when you come from a corporate background. And I always say to people, I've never earned less money. I've invested every dollar I've earned back into the business, and I've lived off my, financial stability for the last 3 years, and I'm totally at peace with it. Totally at peace. So it's interesting, like you say, that alignment, but the money for me doesn't equal the success anymore. I think it's like what you need to live and have a great life is very different from what we think we need to live and be happy. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't need much at all. We just want everything. I mean, I'm starting a business that is based around want as well. And that's fine. It's not bad to want things. Yeah, it's an interesting place to be.
And the last question I want to ask you is, what advice would you have for anyone wanting to reinvent themselves? Because there's a lot of people out there that I meet at the moment who want to make change in their lives, who want to do something different. They know they could be happier, but they're very attached from an ego and a money perspective to their careers,
Yeah.
often at the expense of their mental and physical health. What advice would you have for someone who's wanting to go down this path but just hasn't been able to cross the line in terms of taking the first step?
Yeah. I think, is it Barry Schwartz who writes The Paradox of Choice?
I think so.
Yeah, always terrible at quoting people, but he writes that the secret to happiness or success is low expectations. And I recently wrote about this in that I agree and disagree, or it's really funny because I think having goals and ambition and expectations on yourself is really important because it drives us to be better and to push harder and to take risks. But so long as that expectation doesn't define you and you're not attached to the outcome. So I do try and tell as many people as possible to just be patient and take the pressure off yourself. Realize that the pressure is usually only coming from within and from yourself, and enjoy it. Like we've got time. Again, set those goals, but know that success doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time, and I will be happy when we sell a couple of products. Not really 1,000 or 10,000. You actually lose that joy when it scales like that. It's in the beginning, I think, where it's really valuable and really rewarding. So I think, like, listen to your gut. That's so important, but know that can take time. It took me probably over 2.5, 3 years to actually act on what my gut was saying in business. It took me maybe 5, 6 years to act on my gut in relationships. And some people might look on that with regret and say that they wasted time, but I don't see it as a waste at all because things happened in that time.
Isn't it? You have to process.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, I mean, I work in change. That's my thing. And every single time I talk to someone that wants to make significant change in their life, it's always 2 to 3 years of processing from when they start thinking about it to when they actually do it. It's like you say, it's like you've got to go through the journey of assessing every option and whether it's the right thing to do. And it takes time.
Yeah. You can't rush these things or be too reactive, or you can make the wrong decision sometimes. And life isn't just always, a joyride. Like you go through peaks and troughs all the time, and I'd say ride those out. And then there gets to a point where you either accept that flux and you realize that it's a part of life, or you really ask yourself, is this challenging? Is this not right for me? And am I out of alignment with those few things?
Thank you so much for joining us at Future Proof.
Thank you. Could chat forever.